Hey James, can you see my screen? Are we good?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. Hey everybody, I'm Coach Sammy. I'm really happy to be here. I'll be talking about building consistency within your program through communication and fundamentals. And I'm really glad they found me because I run Consistency Academy and it's one of the main values that I like to focus on with not just my players, but also with myself. The day that I found lacrosse, I spent my whole life wanting to play professional sports, being so motivated to just try my best to improve and to reach those higher levels where they're paying athletes the big bucks and people are getting that attention. And so as a youth, I was playing every single sport. I played baseball, I played basketball, I played soccer, I played football, and every single one of them felt restrictive for me. Whether it was baseball, just how much we were standing still, even though it's a really fun sport. Basketball, going up and down the court but not having the height that I wanted. Soccer, being put in the goal because I was athletic enough to stretch but they didn't want to let me free. And then football, again, just how much stoppage time there was. And so that felt really restrictive. Not just my size, the stoppages in the game and where the coaches were putting me, but actually the freedom in the sport. But then eventually I picked up a lacrosse stick and I did feel free. So what you're going to see on the right is a picture of young Sammy at his first lacrosse camp at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And you can see how enthralled and focused I am with the sport, having a stick and the ball on me. The game ended before I was ready though. So my sophomore year at I went to Loyola University, Maryland, eventually earning a scholarship from Los Angeles. So I came from a non-traditional area to a hotbed area. And that challenge in itself was massive for me. But by my sophomore year, I was able to start fighting for some playing time and make it onto the field. My freshman year, I played some defense, and then my sophomore year, I was actually on the second line, able to produce some playing time, but then I got a concussion. And as I was out with my concussion, my doctors put more tests on me, and they found out that all at the same time, I had a concussion, I had Lyme disease, and I had H. pylori. And so my doctor and I made the decision that I should medically retire because I was having a really hard time getting back onto the field. And that left me having built this entire identity, but still having no impact in the sport that I wanted to and that I chose as my route. But I still stayed close enough to see everything because I didn't want to walk away. And so I stayed. I became the team manager after they told me I couldn't keep playing. And that had me doing every responsibility behind the scenes. I was the cameraman, I was the water boy, I was even the equipment manager at some times. And after that year of being a team manager, I loved the experience and I learned so much. But again, with my identity and who I wanted to be for myself, it was so hard. And so I had to choose to step away. Eventually, I got a job on campus, but I couldn't go too far, so I got a job in sports marketing and operations, where we were doing event planning, throwing t-shirts, running promotions, and I even got to wear that mascot costume, which you'll see me in on the right. And so I was going from a player, getting playing time on that same field, to being the mascot in a mascot costume, having to turn my back to the field and entertain the crowd. And so I got to learn the game from every single seat that there is. And what those seats taught me is that inconsistency inside of a program is rarely just an athlete's problem. That is the lens that I coach through today. And of course, as we're talking about this, we all need to be responsibility for the consistency that is in our program. Why do I coach? I coach because my job is to help athletes discover what they are capable of through work that challenges them, gives them something to achieve, and most importantly, still gives them a reason to come back. So a lot of the time coaches will say, hey, we are here for the hard work and we expect everyone to have hard work. But looking even at statistics, that's not going to be the culture of everybody. And so we have to help them discover what they are first capable of through challenges that challenge them specifically, right? Not everyone's going to see the same challenge from a task. And to give them something to achieve, whether that's high level or low level, having something to achieve and feel like you're improving from does become the reason that these kids come back, not just so that they can achieve in their sport, but also to potentially have some fun, challenging themselves and getting better. And so the framework that I use is 3 questions for myself and for the players. One is, what do they want? So what can I help them achieve that they actually want in their heart of hearts? If they want to have fun, if they want to be connected to their teammates, I need to understand that first before I come with the lens of, well, I want you to do this. Second question is, what do I owe them now? What can I help them achieve in the moment that they need now? And then lastly, the third question is, what do I owe them later? And this is one of the questions that I really take pride in, because I don't see myself as just a lacrosse coach. I see myself as a developer of people. And so what I do owe them later is that they can keep their heads up about the experience that they've had, that they can reflect backwards and say, yes, Coach Sammy had my complete best interests at heart. And as I look at the person that I am today, I am better because of it. Not the other way around where, hey, I was a young athlete, I was extremely impressionable, and coach just made me do all these things, and so now all I have is what I'm told to do. These are completely different experiences, and again, when your players eventually grow up and become adults with their own sentient thoughts and everything that they do for themselves, they will reflect back, and this is our opportunity for them to have a positive perspective on us and their development. Everything today is an answer to one of these questions. When one question wins and when the others don't get served, it leaves us to environments where, if we only give them what they want, they have fun without enough growth. And obviously that's inappropriate as we are developers of people. The second question, only what they need now, that builds compliance in them without trust. We are not here to build the employees themselves. We're here to build the leaders of the future. A lot of these leaders, and especially in women's sports, the leaders come from having experience going through these more challenging things in the sports realm. So we need to make sure that we are not just building compliant people without trust. We need to build the trust so that they can build the trust. And then the third question, only what they need later. And so if I'm only building up people for what they can be in the future, that will have good intentions without enough connection. And if we're not building enough connection, we're certainly not building enough development. And so the job itself is to balance all three of these. The first question, what do they want? Different athletes stay for different reasons. Obviously, boys and girls are different. Yes, we're all humans, but internally we have also different motivating systems. I'm not saying that either of these are exclusive, but more often than not, boys are interested in the status, the challenge, and the competition. Okay, can I tell people what team I'm on? Does everyone get to see me challenge? Does everyone get to see me compete? Can I feel the glory? With girls, a lot more, it's about belonging, relationships, and producing their own excellence. Girls love to be excellent at this sport. And at younger ages, they're phenomenal to work with. They're so smart, so intelligent, and they see that excellence for themselves. But they are way more likely to step away from the game and from their teammates if they don't feel belonging. And if they don't have strong relationships, these things continue to be important. And so what I've noticed with girls lacrosse is that losing hurts, yes, but social conflict wrecks teams, absolutely destroys teams. And for example, when I first started coaching girls lacrosse and I was observing this, I was seeing I have really good players, but they don't even want to work with each other because someone in the past has allowed them to talk to each other such a way where they don't feel loved and respected by each other. They just feel like they have to cohabitate. And so we usually have more problems when someone says something mean, someone got knocked down, someone gets excluded. And even though these are challenges, they're not a problem, they're an opportunity. So as the adult in the room, as the coach who knows better, if we can use these and patch our team back together and build connections and show them that, hey, actually it's not acceptable to say mean things to each other or to knock each other down without picking us up or to be exclusive, then you tend to see that your team is willing to operate within your standards. And that's the first piece of building consistency together. What you're going to see on the right is that my two rec teams, my recreational programs, made it to the championship where we got to play against each other. I have an older team and a younger team. And we knew on that day that we love each other, that we're not here to hurt each other, but that we are there to improve and to give each other a wonderful experience. And if you would look on the right, that's exactly what you're going to see. Arm around arm, younger players, older players. Everybody got better that day. Everybody had fun. And we all walked out being together. The research behind it is that fun, improvement, friends, competition, and health are the motivators that overlap far more than they differ. So if we can pair fun and improvement, and then add friendship, and then add competition, and then add health, wow, you are compounding your system that's going to allow your program to be consistent. Where the emphasis differs, boys may emphasize, like we talked about, the competition, the status, and the challenges, and girls may emphasize more the belongings, the relationship, and the excellence. But belonging isn't a distraction from development. It's often the reason a player stays long enough to develop at all. And so I am very proud of the retention that I keep in my program, where I see other players and other programs get to middle school, get to high school, and then more often want to quit. That's exactly when my girls are recognizing how much I'm investing into them and how much they are there for each other, and they love continuing the journey and coming back. And I even have girls write me letters about that specifically. What do I tell my players on day one to build this environment? This is an exact quote because it's easy enough to systemize and it means everything that I intend. I tell them, girls, I love lacrosse and I hope you do too. But lacrosse is just a tool, and we're going to use it to teach you how to become a better person. Because the qualities that make a strong teammate also help build a strong lacrosse player. I care more about the person you are becoming, the person that you are, and the person that you are becoming. Every practice, we're here to get better and to have fun. That sets every single expectation that yes, lacrosse is wonderful and I love it too, but it's a tool. And you have to take that tool in hand and utilize it to make yourself a better person. And once you are a better person, you can be a great player potentially. But I care about who you are and who you're becoming. And then of course the focus and letting them know we are here to get better and have fun. We are going to have fun most of the time because again, that's a really good way to just get the work out of them, not just focusing them in hard work and doing what we say all the time. The anchor that we use behind the scene of that expectation is a technical mistake and a cultural violation should never get the same response. Dropping a pass is not a character problem, but disrespecting the team is. So again, if you were to look at statistics and how many players can actually catch a ball in lacrosse, because it's not easy to do, you're going to see that there are less players you can catch than you would expect. If I were to get upset every time one of my players drops a pass, that would show low emotional regulation from myself, and that would show low leadership qualities. But what I am more challenging on is that when players disrespect the team, so if the girl that we were looking to pass the ball to drops the ball and then we're all really negative about it, that is not something that reflects well, and that is something that we can correct. If we do throw that pass, we do drop the ball and everyone says good job, well now we are going together and we are making progress because this is a team sport, and team sports require responsibility to people beyond yourself. The team does not have to be perfect, but everyone has to agree on the goal and the standard that we will use to pursue it. Second building block of consistency, having all of those expectations packaged in something that works for you and something that works for your players. And these things can work in any sport. I'm talking about girls lacrosse specifically, but this consistency is what we see a lot of our adults and people in society needing, and to be able to use whatever sport as a vehicle for this improvement is a blessing to all of us, and I thank you there. The anchor in practice is a dropped pass is a right decision with execution failed. We want to reinforce the decision that was made. Laughing at it means that teammates made risk feel unsafe and that our culture took a hit. We need to stop it and step in immediately. One is part of learning lacrosse. The other decides whether learning can even continue. So if that girl goes home, tells her parents they laughed at me, she comes back to the next practice with less confidence, and then she performs at a lower level for me, that's still all my responsibility. I can't blame these kids who don't really know better and who have definitely not seen a better example. And so the next question is, what do they need from me now? What they need from me and us now is that they need clear expectations. They need high standards. They need psychological and social safety. And so that's what we're talking about with not being mean, not letting girls laugh at each other, players laugh at each other. We really need to make sure that everyone feels that safe environment, so that they have the freedom to attempt hard skills and improve from those attempts. And then lastly, the protection from the ridicule, the exclusion, and the disrespect. I mean, we need it as coaches as much. And so the more that we can build the environment for our players, you'll also see them return that same environment back to you, now seeing how valuable it is. The standard, what we expect is the effort, the learning, the communication, a high level of communication and respect. And 2 mistakes with good effort, that's nice try, not our anger. And what does get addressed every time is that mean person behavior, that laughing at teammates, that talking behind back, and that exclusion. And again, I model this first. We model this first, coaches. And that safety is not protection from correction, because we all need correction. And we should all build a more healthy relationship with our own correction. But it is protection from humiliation, which is unacceptable in any realm. Why this matters? This matters, and let's bring some statistics into it, because most players don't quit because the sport got too hard. Again, the kids love a challenge. But the reality is that almost 30%, 29% of athletes who quit say they never felt good enough. And again, that's going to be a product of the parents, the players around them, and the coaches who set the environment. And 21% point to poor coaching. Is that coaching all just X's and O's? Or is it also some role model, some leadership, some standards that you set? Because that all does encompass what coaching is. And I've kept players who are ready to walk away, not by making it easier, but by making it less about lacrosse, by making it more about the person that we're becoming, about the sports that we can play to develop multi-sport athlete techniques and to develop ourselves further. And what safety will actually buy you is that in that safer environment, or that comfortable, no humiliation environment, they will try harder, they will develop more skill, they will take more risks, they will communicate more and at a higher level, and again, they will stay in the sport longer, which is our job. Of course, if you're looking at retention from the side of being happy that players are staying, great. Also, if your program does need the numbers and the financial incentive, which I understand, you're going to benefit from keeping your players around, not just trying to pick up new players and having it be your reputation that, oh, every weekend, new person's getting a new jersey. What do they need from me later? What they need from me later, we've already talked a little bit about, but this is where I really hold myself to a higher standard than I hold them to, because my mission is to become the coach that I wish I had. I have a number of coaches that I am thankful for in my past, but I've also had coaches that have told me I was uncoachable, that I was too much of a struggle for the team, that I wasn't improving enough, and even that I didn't have a grasp of the skills that I needed to execute. Well, of course, like I'm a kid and you're a 30, 40-year-old individual. If you can help with these things, maybe I'll be more coachable, maybe all that. And so 10 plus years in, my job is still to become the coach that I wish I had. And so on the right side, you're going to see myself with one of my 7-year-old players who is awesome, and we're connecting on a high five. And you're just going to see all the energy that I am so focused on bringing. I guarantee you this girl probably didn't run that hard and she might have dropped a couple passes, but it's thank you for the effort, and it's good job for trying, and it's good job keeping your head up. Because again, we just want to keep them in the sport, and we want to have them learn the lessons that are so valuable and so important. Not just be the best, and if you're not the best, you're not going to get my respect, love, and care. These are players who are going to think back in multiple decades. I don't need them to think next year. If they're going to give me in 10 years, in 20 years, a message that says, thank you, Coach Sammy, for just having my back and letting me grow and giving me space, that is what makes it all worth it. Not the text from the parent tonight saying, hey, thanks for letting my daughter score a goal. It doesn't matter. And again, what do they need from me later? They need a person who has this long-term perspective, who will actually help them grow. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water, but I think y'all can see those 3 questions really, really, really attack my approach. And then it helps build the consistency in the approach of my own program. And I know that's what a lot of coaches look for, but I just tend to see a lot more coaches focus on the parts that are wrong and then just the output end of it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Where sports culture goes wrong. It usually goes wrong with winning at any costs, when only the stars get attention, when the athletes are treated as production, not people, and when toughness is the only allowed emotion. And I see a lot of this reflect not just in sports, but in a lot of the environment that adults operate in nowadays. I mean, whether it's from the president down, we see a lot of people who care about winning at any cost. That's not a political point, but you can see the winning at any cost. You can see the stars getting the attention. You can see the production and how people are just treated for their production and how toughness is the only allowed emotion. We, as sports coaches, need to show our athletes that there is so much more to this than just what they're doing and how they can feel about doing it. That they can develop as people, and again, they can be those leaders that we are longing for, that we are begging for, and that athletes have the capacity and the potential for. And so we bring more than the game. Again, I try to become the coach that I needed, and that's an active effort every day, taking the lessons, the wins, the losses, and reflecting to improve. And someone could believe in me, correct me, and understand me. I wish I had a coach who was way more willing to believe in me, to correct me, and to understand me. And if you find that you do have room in this gap, beautiful. Put the work in on yourself personally, and let's make this develop, because again, with more belief, with more correction, because our individuals do need it. And then lastly, more understanding, we can all move together and build that consistency that we're focused on. Teach the fundamentals, adapt the communication, develop the person, and prepare them for more than lacrosse. When my middle schoolers don't end up being the best lacrosse players around, that's okay with me, because again, I know I have more time with them, I have more years with them, and we are going to develop into better players and better people. That's when I'm not really concerned about trying to hold down the best 13-year-old player who's now looking at playing on the East Coast or looking for their new opportunities. Everyone needs to grow, but again, my attention goes to the pack, not the individuals as much. And what they carry forward from those lessons is that they communicate clearly. This is an essential lesson for life, and it's so interesting because we see a lot of adults don't even have the opportunity and the potential to communicate clearly. That they compete without losing character. So when win at all costs also becomes win and become a demon, or win and become something that you don't recognize, that's unacceptable. That's not something that we can appreciate. And I've even heard coaches say to their players, because I was standing right there on the sideline, hey, pretend like you got checked in the head. Let's draw a penalty. We're trying to win the game. How can we accept ourselves and our athletes losing their character over what some might consider a silly game? Again, we want to teach them to communicate clearly, but we need to teach them how to lead and follow in healthy ways. Lead from the front, lead from the back, but also follow appropriately and be willing to question. I would have had respect if that player right there said, no, coach. But how is a kid going to say that to an adult? The reality is that an adult should say, hey, we're not going to flop regardless. I want you to keep your head up. I want you to play in a way that's going to make yourself, your family, and us all proud of you. Even if we lose, it's okay. But again, you don't really hear that. And then lastly, we can handle challenges without withdrawing. Because the challenges of the game are okay and cool to handle. But when we start getting those personal challenges from our teammates and the people who we love, that is when people start to step away from the game and withdraw. And how can we allow bullying in our sport? That's unacceptable. The connective tissue is that athletes, coaches, parents, assistants, admins, even if you can get the refs locked in on your culture, grandparents, and anyone who comes, if we can all be in alignment about what we are trying to serve the kids with, and not just our own individual expectations, that's when you have a program and not just a collection of people. So in the past, when I wasn't taking as good care of this, we had a lot of individuals, and athletes saw themselves different from coaches, and parents saw themselves differently. But with enough challenge and personal development, I now have a program top down, because a lot of my complainers have left. I've allowed them to leave. And all of the girls who had higher expectations for themselves, if they wanted to go do it, great. Otherwise, if they lined up with us, they stayed. Now we have a program of people who are working better to serve the best interest. And that reflects in when we have snack tables, it's all healthy snacks. When we have parents, they're not really yelling and complaining and doing all that toxicity from the sideline. They're not infiltrating the head of their child and just trying to yell out, shoot the ball or whatever. They relax, they support, they let coaches coach, and they let players play. As a result, My players, even 8, 9, 10-year-olds, have come up to me and said, thank you. I'm actually really happy to have heard my parent cheer me on, not correct me. And I'm really thankful that I was able to make a decision instead of freaking out mid-play on the field, which is typically what's going to happen if they hear the primary controller in their life yelling something like, oh, I have to listen to them. And they do that in game and they don't listen to me. So that correction is exactly why we have a program. And again, that's how we've built consistency, built being our focus. And so the 3 questions answered. What do they want? Well, they have different reasons, but they have the same need to belong. And what do I owe them now? I owe them safety. I owe them standards. I owe them information plus accountability, because information without accountability can be torturous. I give them information and accountability, which leaves them with room to fail. And when they do fail, I have to leave that room. I can't hop in with my voice and take that opportunity to be inconsistent. We still have to be consistent and allow them that room to fail. And then 3, what do I owe them later? I owe them later the coach that I wish that I had, and a coach that they'll grow to appreciate. Now, if we have any questions, any pushback, or anything about your program that you would like to talk about, I'll be so happy to answer your questions at this moment. Otherwise, I do want to leave you with my information to stay connected. I have my Instagram, my coaching page, which is Coach Sammy 13. I also have my non-lacrosse page, Sammy Will Inspire, where I work with adults and individuals. And I also have my email, coachsammy13@gmail, if you have any questions for me. But the focus here has been building better players, people, and programs. And thank you for your patience in listening.
All right, Coach. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We really appreciate the time and energy that you put into that. That was great. We'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A. If you could leave your questions there at the bottom. Coach, you can unshare your screen there.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, and I'll have you put that back up there at the end when we're done. Let's see, Q&A. There we go. All right, from a foundation standpoint, when you introduce this building consistency within your program through communication and fundies, what are 2 or 3 non-negotiables that athletes must understand before you add complexity?
That's a great question. Is that coming to my standards for the program or my standards for the level of play?
We could talk about both.
Okay, well, for my program, again, that first standard being that they have to be accountable for who they want to be as a person. So if they're not willing to make corrections to themselves, it does become a lot harder to work with. And that would be one of my first things that I need them to understand. The second is that we have to enjoy our process. We've seen so much cultural information and potentially disinformation where it's work hard, it's work hard, it's work hard. And yes, that is true. For any high achiever that wants to reach a goal, you do have to work hard. But we all know that we have up days, we have down days. We can be inconsistent. And so to find our consistency, we really have to be open to having fun while we work and enjoying our process. I would say the third thing is that the effort has to be given, and your internal dialogue will also reflect what you are willing to give. It's not just what you think you can do with your body. And so when I hear players say, I can't, I don't think I can, or anything of that sort, I really push back against it. I more encourage, Coach, I have a question. Coach, I would like to learn something. Or, hey, Coach, I'm not doing this at a high enough level, but I'm seeing this. Because as much value as we can provide as coaches, the focus shouldn't be just to have them go and then be a drone with the information. It should be that they are really building their own understanding, giving us questions, and then again, just rebuilding their own mental foundation so that they can play the game. Because I love when my players have a high level, but I don't want them to need me.
Let's see. So piggybacking off of that, from a recognition and cues standpoint, what specific cues should the athletes recognize when you're talking about this shared language?
With the shared language, the specific cues that they should be looking for is what feels applicable to them. And so I've kind of made the point that I love when my players speak up. And a lot of that is because I don't want to be the only leader in my own program. I love when there are multiple leaders in a team that are willing to check each other, keep each other accountable, and bring the standards of the entire team. Because when we think about successful organizations, they do have structure, top down. And so I would just add the example of the White House and the presidency. When you the military. If you have a foot soldier who's looking to tie their boots a little bit better, you want them to ask their direct superior. You don't want them taking that basic question all the way up to the president and wasting some time saying, hey, Mr. President, how should I tie my shoes? And so the cues that I want them to look out for are, oh, wow, Coach Sammy said that and it makes sense, but it also makes me feel warm. Okay, leadership can come in this way. And when they see that, I want them to then do their best to express that. Once they then start expressing it, it's trial and error. They sometimes fail, but overall we improve it and then they do better. And eventually we have a program where people can go to each other, where older players are comfortable bringing leadership to younger players, where younger players are more comfortable bringing leadership to older players, and we can all handle problems by ourselves instead of players not talking to each other, players not talking to coach, players going home talking to parents with a different perspective, and then parents coming and trying to talk to coach with a really convoluted lack of understanding. I'm happy to have parent conversations, but I love when us as players, as people, can just handle our own business. And I think that's what we really want from our young people, not just them thinking, okay, how can I go to the highest direct supervisor and then report something and take action against people who care about us.
What are the most common breakdowns that you see with the daily standards, and how do you go about correcting those with procedures to see fast improvement?
Yes, sir. That's a great question because we do see some regressions on a day-to-day basis. And for that, I'll use an example of my 10U players. But it comes to how can I show as much understanding and care as possible without demeaning or jumping on their back with a correction. So I would use an example of my 10U players because I have two of them who are fantastic players. And in other programs, they're so good that the coaches would just allow them to be mean to other people. But with these girls specifically, I have worked on them communicating at a higher level, being kinder to their teammates, and looking more at what they can do, not what others can do for them. And so they now continue to bring that high standard and care about their teammates, and they see the environment where everyone is loving them. But on those days when they're having a little bit more trouble and they're not showing as much internal understanding, I'll just take them aside and be like, hey, do you remember how much all these people love and care about you and how much you've improved as an individual? I know that you care. I know that you've seen your improvement, and I know that you're not interested in having these people dislike you or us moving backwards. If you are as interested in this team as you were before, let's please move forward with a better attitude. Otherwise, if you're not interested in being a part of this team and what we have as our standard, I'm happy to let you go home and you can do whatever you want to do at home. I think if a coach is willing to show their standard but not threaten, it becomes a lot easier to maintain that standard. And again, that's not me threatening to send them home. I was actually asking, hey, if you want to go and be mean and do all that stuff at home, I'll be happy to let you go do that. But if you want to improve here and take the reps, you'll take the reps. And it's really hard for a young person, when you give them that much respect and communication, to turn away from you and say, like, screw all this. If they're going to do that, again, you need to look at the cultural relationship and if this person would even allow you to build a program with consistency. Have that conversation if you need to. Otherwise, and what I see way more often is that the kids are like, yeah, you're right, and I need to be better, and thank you for at least asking me to be better and giving me the chance.
That was great, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
How do you take these standards, these practice standards and your performance measures, and incorporate it when you're looking at film and trying to get them to transition these standards into competition?
Yes, sir. It's interesting. And that's a great question because my action that I took in response to this was something where I knew I would receive backlash, but my team and my girls have given me enough patience and understanding that we've well worked past this in all of our groups. It would feel uncomfortable when things were called out in a group, which is why a lot of the time teams don't do film. Because, okay, everyone has to be accountable and you're calling things out. But if people aren't accountable to your first system and that consistency, it becomes hard to even have the conversation. And so to build consistency for those standards in our film sessions and when we are communicating together, I actually tell my players and the girls that, look, I know it's uncomfortable to hear yourself being compared, and I never want y'all to default to comparing yourselves because comparison is the thief of joy. But what we can get from some comparison is information. How can you uphold yourself next to your teammates? Are you upholding the same standard? Or are you upholding a different standard? And when our offense has certain goals, which I'll talk about in the next presentation, and someone isn't doing that, it has to be called out. Otherwise, the people who will observe that and not see me call it out will then think, okay, well, Sammy doesn't hold standards. I can go do this. I can mess up the system. And then I'll see people just drift away from the system. If people can be patient enough for me to call it out and then just show me the respect of, hey, yes, you're right, and I'm willing to do it, which we just build through our communication and also how much fun we have together. I know you're hearing me talk and like, yes, I hold these kids to really high standards, but at lacrosse practice, 2 out of our 3 practices a week, we'll do things like soccer, we'll do things like dodgeball, we'll do things like capture the cone, capture the flag, play tag. And these things all help us just compete together and hold different standards and play different ways. So I think there would be some attrition if I just continued to hammer them so hard with only lacrosse. But luckily we get to do these other things where teamwork is also still essential. And that just helps us really keep the consistency task to task, whether that's talking together, watching film together, or playing any game together. Like if we're playing soccer and we start complaining, I'll tell them, hey, I don't care if anyone's good. I just want us to try and be teammates and be players. And if we can do that, great. Otherwise, let's do something else.
How do these standards and your expectations and when everything comes together help your athletes evaluate their own habits?
Yes, sir. It's really hard to see a high standard and to not be honest with yourself. And that's why I say comparison is the thief of joy. You can look at somebody who's better than you and start to feel bad. Or you can look at somebody and start to take that information. And so they consistently see that we take the information, but also that I take the information. You saw one of the slides say that I set the standard, and that is true. If I make a mistake, I'm the first one to say, hey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. There was an example last weekend where we should have been playing on one field. We were on another field. I was wrong. And in front of all the players, all the parents, I said, my bad, I'm wrong. And thank you for being right, ladies. And just the willingness to show that standard, I think, is really important. I would add to that there are a lot of coaches and people and parents who don't really work out. And then they ask their kids to work out and do these really hard things that they don't even have the comprehension of. My players see every day. I post my gym videos. I post what I do for myself. And they see how much I also turn these standards to myself. Once they see that, they get a lot of respect for it. Again, I've seen coaches that, can't run, that tell their players to run. And subconsciously, everyone looks and says, well, hey, can you do this too? And once they see that I'm willing to practice what I also preach, it just makes it so much easier to build a consistent environment.
Awesome, Coach. Thank you so much again for sharing your knowledge with us. Make sure you check out the rest of the schedule and stick around for Coach's second session, offensive spacing and ball movement through balanced motion offense. Coach, thank you again for being here today. We really appreciate it, and we will see you in your next session.
Happy to. Feel free to hit me up. I respond to my socials. Thanks, James.